Thank you. So tonight we're doing part two of honoring a dear friend of ours, Peter Mays. We had a one-person show with him in 2010. A long-time attendee, a really key figure in the experimental film world of Southern California from the time he was a graduate student in art at UCLA and started a film viewing club at UCLA so they could actually screen and see some of these crazy underground films they were hearing about were playing in New York. And this is like in 1962. So really one of the longest running figures involved in this scene, both making work through the 60s, being one of the founders of the single-wing turquoise bird light show, being a projectionist at the Fox Venice Theater and at CAA, in his painting work, in his video work, which is what we're highlighting tonight from after the year 2000, and his ongoing support and good nature. And we're just here to honor his presence, and we sorry to lose him in this world. It's been a really devastating month for losses, but we want to give him the respect he deserves. And so just prior to starting, we have words from two people. First, I'd like to introduce Paula Actor, one of Peter's dear friends, to tell us a bit, to say a few words, and then we'll have the filmmaker David Lebrun to give a longer introduction to tonight's work. But first, Paula Actor, come on.
Thank you. So, wow, I'm just so grateful that you're all here, and I'm so grateful to Adam and David for curating this show. Like you said, Peter's work has shown at Filmforum before, so you don't have to die to get your work shown here. It's the painting there is so beautiful because so I was friends with Peter for 35 years, and our friendship was basically encouraging each other's creative expression. And I would hear his process, but it was very private, and he went to art school at UCLA and painting, and then worked his way gradually into working on film and video. And so his process was like painting, and he went back and forth between the two all the time. So that's a painting that was later, and he was painting a lot of Hindu imagery, and that you'll see in the films that you see tonight too. And again, I'm just so happy that you're doing this, and at some point I'll have the websites up again, and that's my job, and I'm doing it. And so in a month from now, Google Peter Mays, and there'll be beautiful things to see again.
Thank you very much.
His wake will be April 28th, and look on his Facebook page for where that will be. It will start at 2 p.m. Okay, thank you.
And then another great filmmaker, longtime friend of Peter Mays and organizer of the shows and of Peter's film work for these two screenings, and to give a longer introduction, here's David Lebrun.
Thank you all for being here. The last time, 2 weeks ago, we focused on Peter's work of the 1960s, which was all made on film, 8mm and Super 8, 8mm and regular 8 film. Tonight's film is almost entirely work of the past decade, done entirely on video and mostly on digital. From the 80s to the early 2000s, Peter made a number of films that were basically slideshow and video diaries and philosophical meditations with improvised narration in his own voice. Several of these are up to 90 minutes long. I've included a relatively brief sample of this work, one short film, A Graveyard Tale, which is the second in the program. The remaining films were made in HD over the past decade or so. As much as Peter's films of the early 60s were enmeshed in the physicality of the film medium, painted and scratched on, spliced and respliced, projected and reprojected, his later films were entirely of the digital world, gathered from images and clips found among the Akashic record of the internet and constructed entirely inside his computer. Dark Island is a mashup of every conceivable trope of the island movie, from King Kong to Survivor and the Carnival Cruise, plus spaceships and aliens. Those of you who were here 2 weeks ago may recall that Peter joked in his writing about the film that in Death of the Gorilla, shot through filters off late-night TV, he had the elaborate sets and cast of thousands any experimental filmmaker might dream of. In a way, Dark Island is a remake of Death of the Gorilla, with Peter now in control of all the sets and actors. Aleph is an alchemical film in 3 acts. Turn is a film that seems to have been made in 2015 as Peter was creating materials with the light show in mind. There was, Peter and I were both part of the Single Wing Turquoise Bird Light Show, which formed in 1968, had a few years of life, and then reformed in 2010 until about 2014, doing museum installations, gallery installations, and residencies at universities. And he created a lot of new material for that. It was sort of going back and forth with the material he was creating for these films. When it became clear a few weeks ago that Peter was not likely to recover from his illness, I took on the task of going through his hard drives to recover the best versions of his digital work to turn over to the Academy Film Archives. During that process, I came across a file with a random alphanumeric name that seemed to be a finished film, missing only sound and titles. I showed it to Peter in hospice. He came up with the title, and we agreed on the music. This will be its first showing.
Wow.
Yoga Sutras, the last film on tonight's program, is subtitled A Reverie. It is a meditation film much in the spirit of James Whitney's Lapis or Yantra, but made using 3D collage rather than a Norden bomb sight. As in the other films on tonight's program, and even those in the previous program of films from the 60s, the same symbols keep recurring in different combinations, like successive dealings of a tarot deck. Enjoy.
So tonight, unlike 2 weeks ago, we'll play all the films straight through, and there won't be a Q&A, but I wanted to thank you all for coming and for remembering Peter with us.